I call Committee of Supply, Section A, to order. We are meeting today to continue consideration of the estimates of the Ministry of Forestry. And I now recognize the Minister to move the vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolved that a sum not exceeding $483,568,000 be granted to His Majesty to defray the expenses of the Ministry of Forests, Ministry of Operations to the 31st of March, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now recognize the member for Peace River South.
Thank you, Chair. And again, welcome to the Minister and all the staff. We don't have a lot of time this morning, but we'll get into it again this afternoon. I was just saying before we got on camera, just letting the Minister know, we'll definitely get in this afternoon to some issues around old growth, the BCTS, probably talk about some stumpage and some revenue issues are in the ministry. But I do want to start with a couple of very specific issues to put on the record. I want to thank the Minister in advance for hopefully dealing with an issue, and I know, and I say this with respect, that he's new to the file, but we'll be aware of this. I've had the privilege of meeting with the Interior Logging Association. I want to do this here because I think it's really important that staff hear this. I know some of them are aware. They are definitely concerned right now on a very specific issue for their members, and that's the ILPP, the pension plan for the interior loggers. There's some huge issues, and I know it's a cross issue between the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Forests, collectively. And I know that the previous Minister of Forests was aware of this, who's conveniently now the Minister of Finance. So I'm putting this out here, and I'm hoping staff, that the Minister will help with this, to get a hold of Todd Chamberlain, the General Manager for the Interior Loggers Association, to help with this issue just very, very quickly. And I won't get into it because it's actually way beyond my knowledge, but there are struggles right now, especially for the small players who have been contributing into a pension fund, the ILPP, for multiple decades now. This started back in the 80s, if I remember, when I was researching it. We're now to the point, though, where the pension plan is underfunded. There's pressure being put on. So I don't know, and I'm not putting blame on why this happened, but we have something in a situation here where we have a lot of small mom and pop operations who are on the verge of bankruptcy if they get pressured into what they're expected to do to bring up the pension plan to ensure that it's a solid plan, right? So anyway, I won't get into the full details other than to say it. I've read through this. This is something that the Ministry and the Ministry of Finance definitely, I hope, will take seriously and get a hold of them, because there's a lot of jobs at stake. Just quickly share that, talked with one individual, 85 years old, who is now receiving a letter saying that he, because he previously owned a company 20 years ago, is being asked to pay upwards of $1 million into the plan. You can appreciate that is not something that can take place. So I'm just looking for maybe a quick answer from the minister that he and his ministry will follow up on this.
Minister.
Thank you, and appreciate the member having advised me earlier that he'd had these conversations, and the regulatory locus of this issue is with the Ministry of Finance. They administer the pension standards legislation. The Ministry of Forests is well aware of this issue and is dealing with it and working with the Ministry of Finance. So I think the minister or the member would be well advised to take this issue up with the Minister of Finance in her estimates, which I understand have not yet taken place. But just to reassure the member that we are well aware of it and steps are being taken. I appreciate the the seriousness of the issue and its importance to the ILA and its members, both past and present.
Member?
Thank you. Appreciate the answer from the minister. Again, I do realize it's Ministry of Forest that manages a lot of this. Ministry of Finance, but obviously looking for the advocacy from the minister. Sounds as through his answer that his staff is aware of this. We will flag it as we have for the Minister of Finance, who we know is aware of this as well. But it does sound like time is of the essence on this specific issue, which is why I thought I would raise it here today on the record and just asking for all hands on deck to consider this. One other issue that I'm looking for some a response from the minister on. About 3-4 years ago, we raised in this chamber during Premier's estimates the lack of availability for MLAs to consult, talk with, frankly even have coffee with Ministry of Forests staff. I will tell the minister as a personal example, I have a district office in Dawson Creek for the Peace Region. Used to have a great relationship with that office and with the staff. This is not an attack on the actual staff that do the work in our field offices. This is more of, I believe, the direction that they've been given. Now, 3-4 years ago, the Premier stood in a large house here and said, absolutely, any MLA can talk to staff in district offices. We've never given direction that they can't. That was 3-4 years ago. We are continuing to hear stories from MLAs, especially right now with the crisis in the forestry sector, who are just trying to get information on behalf of constituents and logging companies or large primaries, who try to reach out to local district offices who are advising us they can't talk to us. They've been advised they cannot answer the door or return phone calls, that we have to have permission and everything must go through the minister's office. We were told by the Premier 3-4 years ago that was not the case and that would change. Can the minister give me an answer on why 3-4 years later that direction has not been given to staff, that we can at least have a relationship like we used to?
Minister?
Thank you very much. What I'm told the normal procedure is, and it's unchanged over the years, is that MLAs are entitled to talk with staff. All that's requested is that requests go in through the minister's office, my office, just so that as the minister we're aware of what the request is. But if those requests can be answered quickly and the meeting set up. The only caveat I would say is that during fire season, it's important that there be some respect for the autonomy of the operation during an emergency. And in the past, and I'm not suggesting that this particular member did that, but there have been occasions when MLAs have entered into the emergency center, the fire center, and it's just awkward and it's not advisable. So that would be the caveat that I would put on that.
Member.
Thank you. Appreciate that answer. I just want the minister to recognize, and well, first of all, maybe I'll go to the latter part of his commentary. Agree, obviously, in a crisis situation, yes, all hands are on deck where they can be, but also understanding the roles that each organization, each department and office plays, trying to manage that during a crisis situation, and the respect that's needed to do that. I think we all agree that it would be inappropriate. Sometimes people are looking for answers for constituents and trying to help and understand the minister's point on time and place in that situation. But I will say on his first parts of his commentary, that didn't always used to be the case, that we'd have to have the permission of the minister. And I'll give an example of where it's not quite red tape, it's the delay that comes into place. Appreciate his offer that they would try to have a quick turnaround in the ministry office. That doesn't actually happen presently. And I'm not sure what the minister's example of a quick turnaround would be, but I'll give him one where I thought, a very simple request from a constituent that was waiting on a permit, contacted the local office because they had been waiting for almost a year for an answer. So I contacted the local office to say, can you give me an update of where we are on a timeline so I can help this constituent along? They said, I can't tell you, talk to the minister's office. It was about 2.5 months later that I got a response back from the minister's office saying, thank you very much, we'll look into this. It never said that I could look into it, and then it was about 6 months later, that same constituent came back to my office saying he still hadn't heard anything. So those are the things I'm talking about. In fact, in a lot of these situations, again, I'm not putting blame on the local district office. I wonder how that's playing out. In a situation where we have a lot of these micro kind of issues, I think we could actually help in that relationship building. It's not that we're trying to have influence on some of these permitting, because I understand, and I believe we all understand, the role that the different offices have looking into the different aspects before a permit is issued. But sometimes that relationship of just having somebody in the local office contact a constituent can go a long way, I think, for all of us, including the minister's office taking something off his desk. So I'm only flagging that. I don't need a response from the minister other than to say that if he thinks a quick turnaround is needed, I do too. I just believe that there's an opportunity here where we can streamline the situation and streamline the offices as well. So that's more of a monologue commentary. I'm not trying to be unintentionally provocative again, like I was last night, as the minister said, but now it's intentional, that's right. So in the last few minutes I have before we move into the other house, I just want to change directions now. We talked in the minister's estimates binder yesterday and some of the direction that, sorry, not estimates binder, the, I'm drawing a blank on the name now, my apologies, on the direction he was given by the Premier. Yesterday we canvassed that quite a bit. But I want to talk now a bit about just the economic state of the forestry sector in the province of British Columbia. It's my understanding, as of last fall, 43 mills in 28 communities are either active or planned curtailments around the province. Has that changed at all? And the minister give me an update through his staff now that we're in the spring of 2023, and I know there have been other permanent closures that have been announced. As of last fall, there was 43. Again, 28 communities. We're talking about communities right around the province. This is not one part of the province. So again, just a quick update. How many mills have closed in the last year? We'll start with, or how many have announced curtailments?
Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to comment on what the member described as a monologue on the contact with the Minister's office. I agree with him, and I don't think that took place since I've taken over as Minister, that the timeline that he set out for a response on a question from an MLA, I agree with him. It is too long, and certainly my direction has been that responses have to be quicker, and one of the highest priorities is responses from MLAs, whether they're opposition MLAs or government MLAs. That has to be a higher priority, and that kind of timeline is, I agree with them, it's too long. So I'll do what I can to make sure that's the case, and the deputy, he certainly is aware of that, and the direction has gone out. So in terms of, as the member knows, the forest industry is cyclical. There's closures do take place, permanent closures do take place, and in the 16 years that the Members' Party was on this side of the House as government, there were many closures. Dozens of mills were closed, 30,000 jobs were lost. So it's not unique to this particular juncture in history, and I think the member is well aware of that. But let me just say, from March, I'm told, from 2021 to March 23, 2023, there have been 8 permanent operating changes announced, 4 full facility closures, 1 partial mill closure, and 3 shift reductions. There have been 9 indefinite closures, of which 7 were full facility closures, 1 was a shift reduction, 1 was a mill closure. So in total, there have been 17 permanent and indefinite curtailments from 2021 to March 23, 2023, just last week. 9 lumber mills, 3 pellet mills, 3 pulp mills, 1 pulp and paper mill, and 1 plywood mill. More than 1,900 workers have been impacted by the permanent and indefinite closures in BC from 2021 to March 23, 2023. The reason for the majority, given for the majority of the curtailments and closures in late 2022 and 2023 have cited fiber supply issues and low lumber prices. As we discussed yesterday, the member will recall that certainly prices on softwood lumber exports into the United States were at record highs in 2021 and 2022, but the prices descended very, very rapidly towards the end of last year and into this year. It continues, and those low lumber prices have a huge impact on the profitability of certain operations, and CEOs and boards of directors to make the necessary adjustments, regrettable as that is. And I would not want to minimize or dismiss the concern that communities have about the impact of layoffs and permanent closures within their community. And the member cited yesterday in the Legislature Chetwynd and the impact of the closure of the mill and the pellet plant there. And for a small community, the impact has a huge ripple effect, as he rightly pointed out, and we're well aware of that. The Ministry of Jobs and the transition teams are there assisting the transition in any way that can be helpful to families, to workers, their families, and to the community. So I think that this is something that we're acutely aware of, I'm acutely aware of, and doing everything we can to mitigate and working with the industry to build a long-term, profitable, prosperous forest sector in the province. And I regard it as a fundamental industry here in the province. And I think the future, notwithstanding some of the current predicament that we face collectively, is in the long run a bright one.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. I am ready. Appreciate that. You know, we're going to get into this probably a little bit deeper after lunch for sure, and appreciate the minister acknowledging, you know, the pressures on communities, obviously, and we'll talk about some of that because we want to ensure the supports are there when these closures, unfortunately, have been taking place around the province. I also am completely aware, as I believe most of us are, of the cyclical aspects of in the resource sector when it comes to the products, whether it's in the mining sector, all the different components, forestry, pulp and paper, you know, dimensional lumber. Obviously, we are subject to a market that fluctuates. That's always happened. This is not new. That fluctuation has taken place and companies make investment decisions, short or long term, based on their knowledge base of understanding those market trends that will happen provincially, nationally, and globally, depending on the product. So can the minister answer then for me before we break here, knowing that this has been going on for decades, that companies know the market trends and make those decisions. The minister just announced to the House, which we all know, a lot of the closures that have taken place over the last couple of years. Can he tell me why he and his government and the Premier of the day said that zero would be closed? Nobody would lose their job. In 2017, he was very bold on his announcement of the importance of the forestry sector. That's one of the only positive things I've heard from this government in the last 5 years on support for the forestry sector, even though the minister himself is saying how important it is. So why did the Premier so boldly say no jobs will be lost, no mills will be closed? Now the minister is saying this is normal and this is cyclical.
Minister, I think what we'll do is we'll break for lunch, and then you can answer the question after lunch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise, report progress, and ask leave to sit again.
The question is that the committee rise, report progress, and seek leave to sit again. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you, members. This committee stands adjourned.